invariant tetrahedron. In other words, the parameters of generating these budding forms all can be determined from an invariant tetrahedron. So there really is a tetrahedron or a cube, which is a double tetrahedron. Here's a double tetrahedron. Two tetrahedrons through each other forms a cube around an apple or around a fruit. And so we have a model of a seed with a little DNA inside, if you'd like, and it grows into a fruit, which has a seed inside of it. Remember, the Zohar says, fruit tree yielding fruit whose seed is in itself. And so this is a model of the fruition of that seed. It's what it grows into. And it's identified with Valentine's heart, with William Tell's apple, if you'd like, with Apollo. If you look at one section of this, it's Chrisman, it's a symbol identifying Christ in Christian tradition. If you look at the most common stained glass window, so-called rose window, occurs in synagogues and churches and in mosques. Most people assume that these yellow leaves are the leaves of the six-sided Shushan flower. Shushan is the name of a six-sided flower. And this is flat. But in fact, what's really going on is you've got a cube with a vortex on each face, and you're looking down the tip of it. And so that's the shadow of this. Think of each of the vortices as these guys. And there's, of course, six. And they're one each on each face of the six faces of the cube. So this very common drawing in all traditions is really just a two-dimensional projection of this apple, this grail cup, this philosopher's stone, this Gordian knot, this apple, this Apollo apple. Now this center point, this is Apollo, the pagan sun god, to the peasantry in Greece. But the philosophers, they recognized that that sun center was not an ordinary sun center. Their calling it a god would have been like our calling it a fountain. I have some quotes on that too, which I don't think I have time to get to. It's a recursive fountain. It's again looking into this acorn, into the oak tree, into the acorn, into the oak tree, into the acorn, all the way back to the sun or to God, depending on the metaphor you're using. Sun being a metaphor for God. The sun thought of as an event horizon, like an acorn is. I'll show you a little cute thing here to the sheet. So I didn't bring any of the Greek letters along, but if you recognize that that's the same as the Hebrew letter B, you'll recognize that as the Greek letter B. Right, let me sum some of this up, and I want to get to one main point, because otherwise I'm going to not be able to finish it. All of the things on this table are one model. They all unfurl from each other. They map an embryonic process. What does this have to do with consciousness? Well, let's pick up the little letter again. This is the element that generates the letters. I could use this as a kind of pointer, you see. I could point to any direction I wanted to with this, as if I had a shaft down the spin axis and it was a little arrowhead. If I was standing on the globe of the Earth and walking around, and this was me, my consciousness, my life that was modeled by this flame, then my feet to my head direction would point in all kinds of directions in 3 dimensions. And then I could rotate and look in any number of directions from any position. Well, every time I did that, if you were looking at me, you'd see a different letter. The letters represent perspectives of this object as you move around it. Then what's a sacred text consisting of a string of these letters? It's kind of the directions for following a kind of path, step by step. Each letter rotates you, or rotates this object in your mind's eye. I'll read you a couple of quotations here. This one is from an old Science News, where Dietrich Thomson is reporting on conference in quantum theory and gravitation. They're searching for a universal language for physics, and they end up suggesting that Clifford algebra should be used as a universal language for physics because it's a language of manipulation and directions, called spinners, really, in physics. Little unit directions, little unit spins in hyperspace, elements of Einsteinian space-time. Here's another quote, another diagram, actually. Sorry. This is from Robert John and Brenda Dunn's book on quantum mechanics of consciousness, where they're talking about mapping points of conscious focus on a, basically, on a spherical coordinate system. I believe that, understood appropriately, this little object and these letters represent directions in space-time and directions in conscious focus. And to be taken on a little trip of one to another point of conscious focus is to be taken on a little internal meditative dance, a little yogic path. If that sequence led to a transcendental experience, then that would be a sacred text. If one had a yogic dance or a mental exercise, a meditation that one wanted to record for posterity, that if one could perform it would produce an initiatory, a baptismal, a near-death, an out-of-body experience, whatever you want to call it, then this would be a way to record that. Now, I can't show that that's what really happened here. Until we can identify a particular direction with each letter and do it analytically, obviously in computer simulation, we can't reconstruct the path, so we can't verify if this is true. But there's a lot of evidence that something like this is going on. So that's sort of the significance of this. Both mathematicians and meditating rabbis report that if you turn over a hyperdimensional object or a three-dimensional object in a hyperdimensional space in your mind, that is the equivalent of a meditative experience that does evoke an experience. And so it looks like this geometric metaphor, if you can understand it, if you can follow it, if you can allow these forms to blossom in your own mind, if you can look at these views of the flame, which I don't know how many of you looking at these sequence of shapes would realize they were all shadows of one object. But if you could interpolate in your mind the intermediate shape between these two, if you can rotate this in your mind's eye, you can do that meditation, then you might have an experience. And I would suggest people try it. I can't tell you what will happen with you. I know that these are powerful and evocative figures for me. That's where they came from. Let me look at my notes and see if there's anything I really wanted to say, because I can see we're running out of time. Maybe I should go over these drawings a little more, cover anything I didn't. Yeah, let me just make a few quick points. In the Kabbalistic tradition, they say that there are three letters that are mother letters, and they never give a reason. It's in Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Formation. They say the letters are Aleph, Mem, and Shin, A, M, and S. The only letters adjacent to the center point in the Genesis pattern are this Aleph, these two Alephs, this S, and this M, which could be slid in. And so this figure validates the Kabbalistic discussion of the three mother letters. This is how a tetrahedron would unfurl fractally. And that's what's really going on here. It's like any other living system. It keeps propagating on itself. So not only does this little tetrahedron make 4 tetrahedra, but each of these makes more. And it keeps growing. And again, it would be lovely to do that on a computer sometime. I wanted to mention this. These 12 points, 12 spheres that surround this 13-petaled rose that this shushan flower grows through. By the way, now we know why the first word is translated bara sheet. Created 6, or created a thorn. Here are the 6, and there was the thorn. This is a unifying model. The divergent translations to the first verse, if you have these models, all mean the same thing. The war the academic scholars have between Apollo meaning an apple and Apollo meaning not many is resolved by the one apple. The model satisfies both discussions. Let me think if there's anything else. Oh, I did want to do these. If you take the little vortex forms and you double them up, this is a mirror image. You remember there's 7 principal views. You have what looks to this non-expert as 7 postures corresponding to 7 chakras. Those are like yogic meditation postures. They look a little like a yogi sitting there meditating. I don't know, that guy's levitating already.